Let me know if some glitch happens in the video and all. Is it visible now, my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Fine. So, yeah, so let's start. So what we were discussing last time, some reluctance motor kind of thing, right?
Yes, sir.
Switch reluctance.
Okay. So this is the structure which we started with, and what we figured out that if we allow this plunger to move in this C core electromagnet, so this will go and connect or hit the C core over here. So that was happening because of the tendency of this magnetic material to move towards the lower reluctance path. This is what we have seen, right? You understood this thing, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, screen is visible, right, to everyone?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Fine. So then what we understood that from the flux linkage point of view, what is happening? So we figured out that the torque is actually, kind of coming proportional to the square of the current, and then this dl by d theta. So that means the change in the inductance. So what we tried to do, we tried to plot the flux linkage for the two extreme locations when our L is minimum, which means the air gap is maximum, and when our air gap is minimum. So it is moving between the 2 points, and what we understood that if we take the current to a certain value while the inductance is at the minimum value, and we allow it to move, then our flux linkage will increase for the same current because our inductance is reducing or reluctance is reducing. Sorry, inductance is increasing. Our reluctance is reducing. It's going towards the high reluctance path. And then it will be able to come to the maximum inductance position. And then what we can understand that the amount of change in the co-energy what has happened, which means this section 2 what is given over here within the triangle OAB, that actually has gone into the mechanical work in moving the plunger. So now the plunger must have gained some kinetic energy. So if we do not stop that, it will go and hit it, and that is where the energy will be spent. And the rest of the energy, what you see in the upper triangle, that will be returned back to the source. This is kind of magnetizing energy, which is like our reactive power kind of thing. And then that goes back to the source. So this thing we tried to realize in a rotation kind of arrangement. So where we can have a motor with a fixed stator and a piece of magnetic material which can move. So if we have, let's say, 4 poles on the stator and there are 2 poles, you can say, on the rotor. So this will also have similar kind of tendency. If let us say this plunger or this piece or the rotor is close to one of the magnetic poles and you are exciting that, it will have tendency to go towards the lower reluctance path, which means go and align along this axis. Now what we do, we basically excite the coil, and the moment this is about to align along this axis, we take off the excitation. So what will happen, the momentum what this rotor has gained, it will keep on rotating with that. So let us try to understand that from inductance point of view, what is happening. Let's say with theta, our inductance is changing, and we will also plot our dou L by dou theta. And then to generate torque, what current we need to give, and then what will be the resultant torque. Let us try to understand these things. Now what is happening? Our L is at some minimum value. This is our L min. And from here, when the plunger starts moving, it goes towards the Lmax position. So this is where the rotor is aligned along the stator axis or stator pole axis where the L is maximum. And if it is allowed to move further, the L will reduce further and come back to the L minimum position, and then this cycle will repeat. This point is clear, right? There is no confusion in this. Because of continuous rotation, so maybe just to give analogy with the first example which we saw with this case, so here our L is having only two positions. There are also only two positions, but here what will happen? It will be at L min, and once you excite, it will go and get fixed to L max. So there you need to pull it back to bring it back to this L minimum position. But otherwise, there are only two possibilities for this plunger when we talk about the C core. There is no continuous rotation or continuous change after L max. It has come to the maximum inductance value, and that's all. It will stay over here. So this is the condition here. But in case of rotation, our rotor is continuously moving, which means it will cross through the minimum maximum positions several times while it is going from theta equal to 0 to theta equal to 360. You can see over here. Let us say if we take this coil A and A dash. So it is about to align along both the coils, which means now it is at L minimum. Again, after 180 degree, it will be in that similar position. So, okay, let's go one by one. So this, let's say this is our theta equal to 0 axis. So here it is aligned fully. Now it starts going away. And when it is 90 degree, it will be completely out of this position. That means here, with respect to coil A, we will have L minimum. And then again, it starts going opposite to towards this A coil. So it will start coming towards the L max and so on. So what is happening if you keep on rotating this piece or this rotor, you will encounter these L min, L max positions several times. Understanding my point? This thing is clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is how our L plot or inductance plot will look like with respect to theta mechanical. This is our mechanical theta. It is starting from some L minimum, then going to L max, then coming back to L minimum, and so on. This cycle is repeating several times. Now, if you have to plot the rate of change of inductance, how that will look like. So we have several segments over here. So first segment where L is constant, it is at L minimum, our dL by d theta will be 0. There is no change in inductance in this position. When, let's say, the coil is perfectly between the two extreme positions. Let's say, okay, let me draw again. Probably this is too clumsy to understand. Okay, so probably this will help in understanding a little bit better. Now you see the positions over here. Let's say with respect to this pole you are talking about, A. So this is where it has the maximum flux linkage, or we can say this coil will see maximum value of inductance. Now once this moves to a position something like this, there we will see the inductance at the minimum value. This is clear, right? So what is happening? There is certain interval over which there is overlap. So the L value may not change much during that overlap period. Here also, if you move in between for a certain duration, the value of L may not change. This is where I say the L will remain constant at some maximum or minimum value. And this is where there is no effect. There is no change in L by small theta movement, 10 degree, 20 degree. There is no such change. So then our dou L by dou theta is actually 0. Whereas for this interval, when it is rising from L minimum to L maximum, we will have a positive dl by d theta. Again, this will go to 0 in this position. The intervals may be same or little bit different. So this is because of drawing inaccuracy, it is looking little different. Now, when it is coming down from L max to L min, we have negative value of inductance, rate of change of inductance, dou L by dou theta. Then again it's going to 0, and then this cycle repeats again. Understanding my point? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Now we have understood that torque is nothing but I square by 2 times of dou L by dou theta. Now assume if you have excited the coil throughout this 360 degree mechanical. So what will happen? What torque it will develop? What will be torque during this duration? During this interval?
0.
0. Now if you come to this interval where our dou L by dou theta is positive, what will be the torque?
Positive.
It will be positive. Some positive value will be there. Again, after that,
0.
next interval,
0.
0.
then after that,
Negative.
Negative.
after that,
0.
0.
and then this cycle repeats. You are seeing what I am trying to say? These widths are equal actually. Don't confuse with pulse width kind of thing. These theta is equal. Now you understand the thing now. If we are keeping the same current excitation throughout the motion, what will happen? We will have positive torque, then we will have negative torque, again we will have positive torque, negative torque, and so on. So net resultant torque, what we will get? 0. So which means what will happen if we keep the same excitation throughout? What will happen? This rotor will be oscillating like this along this axis until it settles to a fixed value. Understanding my point? So what we need to do, we need to apply the current excitation only when it is necessary, only when it is required. Understanding my point, right? So when it is required, let's say we want to generate a positive torque. So when we should apply the current or excitation? Only when our dl by d theta is positive. This point you are getting?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
instead of exciting it throughout, what we will do, we will give current pulse only for certain intervals. So what we will do, we will give a current pulse here, and then we will give a current pulse here, and then we will give a current pulse here, and so on. Only when our dou L by dou theta is positive. When this is true for all the coils. I am taking example of only one coil over here. We will see example for 2 coils also later on. So this is how the excitation in coil A, let us say, will look like. It will be a pulsed current given at specific intervals. Then what will happen? There will be net resultant positive torque, and it will not oscillate. So it will be positive here, then after some time it will be positive here, and so on. Then there will be some net resultant torque. It will not be 0. Understanding my point? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So this is how
Yes, sir.
we operate our reluctance motor. Now another point comes. How much current you have to give over here? What is the limit for that? How much we should give? Where we should operate? Any idea? So if you see the excitation versus the flux linkage plot, so this is what we get. Let us say two extreme positions if we discuss. One position where our L is minimum, so our flux linkage will follow this line. Or this we can say as theta unaligned. Theta equal to theta unaligned. When the rotor is completely unaligned with the stator coil. And when this is fully, let's say, aligned, so there is a limit on lambda. We know that the saturation limit is there. Beyond that, we cannot have our flux linkage. That is the saturation limit. So let's say we go to the extreme. Something like this. Here our theta is perfectly aligned. Please mind that this is the excitation on x-axis. So this we have to decide up to what value our excitation is useful, and when it starts going on the negative side, it starts giving disadvantage. So let us see. If you first operate within this linear zone of the graph, so what will happen? You excite the coil, let's say this is value I1. You excite the coil, the flux linkage reaches some value, and then you have the moment of the rotor and it goes to Lmax value, and then you reduce the excitation. Understanding my point? Now we have understood the area within this graph, let's say OAB. This is our mechanical work done, proportional to the mechanical work done. Now, certainly, if we give little more excitation, let's say at this point I2, and we allow it to move up to this point, still there will be no change in movement, there will be no disadvantage or any other harmful effect on the coil or the machine, but we can have now a bigger area. So which means more mechanical work done can be taken out, or more mechanical energy can be this energy can be extracted out in form of mechanical energy. Understanding my point? Now, if you increase further, you go up to I3. Now, what is the problem? Is there any problem? If you follow this, go up to I3. Now, what is the problem?
Saturation.
Saturation.
Okay. Saturation is there, but what is the problem with that? Lambda will go and fix to some value, that's all. What else it has to do?
Sir, DL by inductor become constant and DL by d theta is always 0.
Not always, only in this position. From here to here it is changing, right? L minimum to L maximum. Is it not changing? Yes or no? So only when it moves closer to this thing saturation limit, it starts going flat. That's okay. There is no problem. Still we have some dou L by dou theta, significant value from the minimum to maximum position. Understanding my point? So here for reluctance motor or SRM, we generally operate up to the saturation limit. Up to what? Maximum lambda max or maximum difference in L we can extract. Understanding my point? Now, of course, there is no problem in saturation. Why there is no problem? Because we are not relying on a fixed value of L. We want it to change. Compared to induction motor or synchronous motor or any other motor, we do not want L to be fixed. We want it to change. So that is why we operate generally the SRMs up to the saturation limit. So a typical lambda I curve would look like this for SRM. You will have the minimum inductance position and you have the maximum inductance position. So something like this. We excite it up to the current where in the aligned position it touches saturation, so that we can extract maximum energy out of this. We can extract maximum mechanical work out of this. And then we have to demagnetize, we have to reduce the excitation. So it will come back to its zero value. And of course, it is a soft magnetic material. Even if very small residual thing is there, that doesn't matter. Getting my point? Understanding my
Yes,
point?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
So,
sir.
from unaligned to theta aligned, there will be several curves defining this lambda I characteristic for different theta. If you change, let's say theta 2, theta 3, theta 4, theta 5, all these are intermediate positions of the rotor. So which means each and every value has some L, which is changing from this L minimum to L max here. Understanding my point?
Yes.
So this is how a typical lambda I graph for reluctance motor would look like. So for maximum extraction of power, what we do? We start at the unaligned position where theta is this L starts changing with theta. That moment you excite it and then let it change and you turn it off when it reaches L max. So that means moving on this bigger curve OAB. Go up to A, then from here it will move up to B, and then you reduce back it to 0. Clear? Fine?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes.
the problem is, okay, let us assume that, sure, you have saturated it, but everywhere it is saturated, right? Further, at any other point. Why not operate here? Why stop at the saturation limit? Why not go further? What problems do you see if I operate at I4 instead of I3? Or let's say here something at I5. What is the problem with this point? What do you feel?
Change in inductance will be minimum.
Which inductance?
L minimum to L maximum.
So few things you need to understand. First of all, you are dealing with a practical system. Practical system means you are increasing the current, means what? You are increasing the conductor thickness. So to carry the same current, the conductor need to be much more thicker. So you have to firstly optimize there, that what is the maximum possible advantage, we take that, and beyond that we do not go. So up to this point you see the change from L min to L max is maximum. For this I3, L min to L max is maximum. But after that, so this delta L or delta lambda, whatever you say, this is maximum for this operating point. Further, this starts reducing, which means we are losing something. This is not giving any further advantage. Secondly, we are putting extra conductor, extra thicker conductor for carrying this current. And if we are taking too deep into the saturation, while coming back, it will take a lot of time to bring back to zero. So machines which are running at higher speed, they will have very small time to excite and de-excite. So that's why we do operate up to saturation, but not too deep into that. So we do not keep it saturated for very long time because of these 3-4 reasons. Understanding my point? These are the practical constraints. If you can think of some other options, some other issues over here, you can suggest. These are the things which I am able to see straight away. Understanding my point?
Yes, sir.
So good. So far we have understood these things. Now let us try to understand multiple phase SRM. So let's say 2 phase, for example, and how do we decide the step angle and all these things. Let us try to understand. So one thing I hope you are clear so far, that when we say SRM, it is a lumped winding machine. Lumped winding means the winding is concentrated around each stator pole. This point you are clear, right? There is no distributed winding on SRM. It is all lumped winding machine. Clear, right? Now, how SRMs are generally named? So it is named as the number of stator poles by number of rotor poles. So as of now, if you see, there are 4 stator poles on this SRM and there are 6 rotor poles on the SRM. So this will be called as 4/6 SRM. Similarly, there could be many other combinations for SRM. Okay, one example, maybe if I show little more complicated structure. So practical SRM will have several stator and rotor poles, and so that we get a good angle for the rotation, which means good step angle. So is it visible?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
this is
sir.
how a more practical SRM will look like. Now you count how many poles are there. So you can start from, let's say here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is called 12/8 SRM. Understanding my point? Now this yellow, what you see over here, this is the winding for this particular pole. And then your rotor is free to move. So you see, at a time it will be aligned to only fixed number of positions. Let's say these 4 positions it is aligned. And several positions would look similar. Let us say if you talk about this pole, let me write in black. Let's say this pole position where rotor is just away. So which is similar to this also. It is just away. Which is similar to this also. It is just away. Similar to this also, it is just away. And then you have some position like this where it is about to align. Here also it is about to align. If you assume this counterclockwise direction of rotation, here also it is about to align. Here also it is about to align. Understanding my point? So all the red markers what you see, it is at this moment aligned. That is one category. Second category is there where it is going away. So all the black where it is going away, and then green where it is next going to align if it continue rotating in the counterclockwise direction. So 3 categories you are able to make over here, right? So this defines how many phases are there. Let's say A, B, C, depending on how many poles are having similar position. So all those, let us say, which are aligned, you can call them phase A. So let's say this can be called as A, here A, and this is A. And all which has gone past the alignment, let's say these black ones can be called as B. And then you have green where it is about to align. So these can be segregated as the third phase. So now you understand how the phases are defined or how the phases are decided for any SRM, depending on the relative position of the stator and the rotor. So all the poles which are having similar configuration can be clubbed together and can be given as one phase name. Let's say A. So for a 12 by 8, we can say, like, for this particular machine, we have 3 phases. It's a 3-phase 12 by 8 machine. Whereas here, if you see, there are only 2 positions because only 4 poles are there on the stator. So either it is aligned or it is not aligned. For the 4 by 6, either it is aligned or it is not aligned. That's all. Only 2 positions are there. 2 groups you can make. So how many phases could be there?
Two phases.
Yes.
Two phases.
So you can have phase A and A dash, let us say, and B and B dash. Understanding my point? This is how SRM phase is defined or decided. So when they are manufactured, then depending on the position, we can say that, okay, these many phases will be there or these many positions could be there at any given moment. Fine. Now, these positions or these pole configurations which you are seeing, 4 by 6 or 12 by 8, these are all non-integer combinations. Non-integer combination means if you divide this stator by rotor number of poles or rotor by stator number of poles, that will become a non-integer. Both the options. If you say, like, I have another this SRM which is like 4 by 2, then it is integer, and then if it is 2 by 4, it is non-integer. No. Any combination, stator by rotor or rotor by stator, if any of this is integer, then we have certain positions where the possibility of lockout is there. For example, if let us say we talk about this 4 by 2 SRM, it has 4 stator pole positions, let's say like this, and then the rotor has only 2 positions. Now in this position there is tendency that once by mistake, if the coil is excited for a little longer time and it gets stuck in this position, there is no means that you can bring it back to this other phase side. Let's say this is A dash, B dash. Now without mechanical or manual interference, you cannot bring it back to another working condition. So this is called lockout. This is true for 2 by 4 machine also. You have only 2 stator but 4 rotor positions. Again, this is the same condition. So whenever this is integer, this may happen. I am using the word may because there are certain machines which have integer combination, but they avoid locking by certain arrangements. So they will make it little asymmetric to avoid the locking. Understanding my point? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So generally we have combinations of stator or rotor which is non-integer, so that if even if one is aligned, let us say position like this, even if this is aligned fully and you have taken little more time in reducing the excitation, still you have the possibility of this getting aligned to the second phase. This is close to about to be aligned. So that's why it may next be aligned even if this is stuck here for some time. Understanding my point? You have always a possibility which is about to align. Let's say this combination which I am talking about. Understanding my point? So if you excite the next phase of coil, irrespective of where the position for the first coil is, it will go and get aligned. Whereas in a combination something like 4/2 or any other integer combination, you will have tendency like this. So if it is locked out, even if you excite this B dash, nothing will happen. It is stuck in that position. Understanding my point? Now,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
how to decide the step angle? So, simple way I can suggest. Let's say this is 12/8 SRM. So the pole pitch for the stator, let's say I indicate by theta s, and for rotor by theta r. So what is theta s? This is nothing but 360° by number of stator poles, and theta r is nothing but 360 by rotor poles, isn't it? Which means simply the mechanical angle between the two poles. What is the angle between these two and what is the angle between these two? That's all. Understanding my point? This is your theta s, this is your theta r. Because it's symmetric. For asymmetric machines, there is different way. But for symmetric machines, this is how we have. Now the step angle, you can decide by taking the highest common factor between the theta s and theta r. This will be your step angle. So for example, if you have this 12, then what is the step angle here for theta s? What is the pole pitch for stator? And for the rotor?
30 degree.
Quickly.
Sir.
And
45.
30 and
45.
45.
correct. So now HCF of 30° and 45°, what is that? You remember HCF, right? The highest common factor. Okay, that is 15 degree.
15.
Hmm?
15.
So the step angle
15.
for this motor would be 15°. So every 15° mechanical movement, it will get aligned. So of course, if you see carefully, let me draw this again. You will be able to visualize that why I am saying like this. Say if this is your theta equal to 0° position. This I am talking about mechanical angle. Don't confuse it with electrical. This is theta mechanical 15°. This is theta equal to 0° position and it is aligned over here. Okay, now what is this angle? Stator angle 60°, right? Here it is 30, here it is 60. And what is this rotor angle? 45°. So this is 90 here. So what is the difference between the two?
15.
15 degrees, sir.
So just 15° movement and this will be aligned to this. Correct? So either you can simply see from the geometry what is there, how much angle it need to turn to get aligned, or you can go by this understanding. Whatever is the HCF for the pole pitch angles for stator and rotor. That is what is your step angle for the SRM. This is important. When you say step angle, this defines a lot of things about your SRM. So a good SRM means it will have very small step angle, let's say some 5 degree or 10 degree or something like that, so that you can control it better. So which would obviously mean lot of poles on the stator and rotor. Understanding my point? Now something like our this 4/6 SRM, what would be the step angle? Quickly, can you suggest? What will be the step angle for this?
90 degree.
Yes, 90 degree.
30 degrees.
Yes,
30 degree.
yeah. So nothing. You have 4 poles on the stator. So your theta s is how much?
Ninety.
90 degree.
And what is your theta r?
60 degrees.
60
60
degrees.
degree.
60
Getting my
degrees.
point? Either you can say the difference between the two, or you can say the HCF between the two. Both are correct. There is no problem. Okay. So every 30 degree, this will get aligned to one position. Understanding my point?
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now let us quickly see how our inductance is changing for the two phases. So maybe let me draw a little accurately. Because this will decide how your currents are going to be for the different phases. So another meaning of 30 degree is that every 30 degree, your one of the phases will get aligned to minimum or maximum inductance value. Every 30 degree mechanical. So electrically we can say that our 30 degree mechanical is equivalent to 180 degree electrical. So where our inductance value is changing from minimum to maximum. Fine. So let's say if we talk about coil A, B, and then what current we need to give for A and B. Let's say these 4 things we talk about. So what will happen? For coil A, the inductance may go like this. So what will happen if for coil A, this is going from unaligned position to aligned position. For B, it will be going for aligned position to unaligned position. This you are clear, right? So both the inductance will be 180 degree away electrically. So this will be moving from maximum to minimum. This is ideally how the inductance will look like. Practically how it will be, it may be flat at the minimum for some time, then it will move and then it will become flat. Something like this it will look like. the practical inductance for phase A. And for B, it will look like maximum for some time, then reducing, then minimum for some time, something like. Clear? Now, when will you apply current in phase A? During this period? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So 1, 2, 3, like that you will apply the currents for the A phase. So whenever this is changing, maybe between this interval. So current may be like this, pulse current over here. Then the next current could be here. And then the next current pulse could be here. Getting my point? For B, it will be during the other intervals. So while it is increasing, the B coil inductance is reducing. We will not excite that coil for having continuous torque generation in the same direction. We will excite only when B is also having the positive value of rate of change of inductance. So something like this. Understanding my point? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So this is how the pulses of current would be applied for different phases. So you excite A, then you demagnetize, you excite B, demagnetize, then you excite A, demagnetize, and so on. So this will go in sequence. So this interval is what you are calling as a step angle, 30 degree. This is 30 degree mechanically. Electrically, this is 180 degree, you can say, because your quantity, let's say inductance or flux linkage, is changing from minimum to maximum value. So if you want to correlate, this is how it will correlate. This will be your theta electrical, this will be your theta mechanical. Understanding my point? Now, there are two coils for each phase, right? For A phase and B phase, there are two coils each. 4 poles are there. One coil here for phase A and one coil here for phase A. So how do we connect these two? So always what we do, we try to maintain the flux direction which forms a loop. Or it will go something like this. So if your current is having positive direction or is having flux giving in this direction, then you will have this current giving flux in this direction. Because current direction here doesn't matter, it's I squared. So if you connect these two in series, you will form nice path for the flux. If you connect opposite, what will happen? These two flux will start opposing each other. So you will not get the benefit of that. Understanding my point? How the flux lines would be. So a typical flux line could be like this. Understanding my point? So this coil, if it is giving flux in this direction, this coil will make flux in this direction. So these two will be in series. So obviously if you have two terminals, let us say A and A dash, and you give current over here, current pulse I, so you need not worry what direction the current is flowing or how it is going, if you have maintained this thing. So you consider this, both the coils, as a single one coil where you are giving a current pulse, that's all. Understanding my point? So it doesn't matter how many coils you have, as long as your winding is appropriate, your orientation of this coil is appropriate, it is fine. For multi-phase machine, when you have 3 or no more than 4 poles coming together, which we saw earlier, for this kind of motor, again what you ensure, if the flux is entering, let's say from this phase, it can go out from this. So this could be your kind of north pole, this could be your kind of south pole. And similarly here, it could be like this. This is one example I am giving. So if this is north pole, or this could be south pole, this could be north pole, so that the symmetry is also maintained. Understanding my point? So this is how we orient. Now all these could be connected. So these both can be connected in series, and then these two in series, and both of them can be in parallel. So ultimately you will have only two terminals, A and A dash, let us say. Understanding my point, right? Understanding my point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is how we can orient our poles so that we have nice flow of the flux in the core or in the machine. Similarly, for other phases also, when they are aligned, you can draw. This is how the flux may look like. Clear? So this is the thing for more complicated SRMs. For this kind of SRM, simply we can say, okay, you connect in series and you operate. And your currents for the A and B phase could be like this. Now, the question is, these are always controlled through some converters. No, any SRM or any motor is always controlled through some converter. Otherwise, how would you provide a constant current pulse? How would you maintain a constant value of current? For voltage, it is fine, but here we are maintaining current. So this is where we need to have some converter, and we need to control that in a specific manner. So that we can see in the next class. I will stop here. So next class we can see the converter topology and the control, how we are going to have for the SRM. We will take example of this two-phase machine only. Fine. Okay, any questions up to this point? Quick questions if you have.